Okay, cool.
You're back listening to the B2C Lead Generation podcast, or maybe this is your first time listening, in which case, welcome. My name is Daniel Hopewell, and I tend to be the co-host of the show that sort of provides structure and keeps things ticking along. And my co-host Simon Delaney is the one who jumps in with the deeper questions. And with that in mind, today's pod is entitled A Deep Dive into SEO. And we have Sam Dunning from Web Choice with us today to help us try and traverse that journey. Welcome to the show, Sam.
Hey, Daniel. Hey, Simon. Thanks for having me on, guys. Looking forward to it.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
So we'll start with a big question. It's Friday. What have you got today before you to finish today before you can sort of write it off for the weekend? And what have you got planned this weekend?
Oh, for Friday. Yeah, there's a few bits and pieces, really. We've got a few projects we're going to kick off in terms of there's a few websites, a few SEO strategies. So we've got to get those started. Got a few websites we've got to kind of get to the design sorted out for with the rest of the team. Get that all squared away. And then we've got the big England game later on. So it's actually my fiance's old man's 60th. So there's a bit of a party going on. So we'll chip off to that once we clock off and maybe have a beer or two and hopefully watch England get a win.
Well, this is a thing too. We're going to put this live like probably next week or something, so people listening will be like, there's idiots who are so full of hope, or they're like, they can listen back to us.
Could go very well or very badly.
Okay, so we'll start off then. Just very simply, could you sort of intro yourself, Sam? Just sort of tell people what you do and tell us a little bit about Web Choice.
Sure thing. So, yeah, I'm the co-owner over at webchoiceuk.com. And essentially at Web Choice, we help businesses with custom websites and SEO strategies that generate leads and sales. And aside from that, I also run a podcast called Business Growth Show, where each week we put out 2 episodes. One's with a guest, usually a marketing specialist or a sales specialist or entrepreneur. And we also put a solo episode. And essentially we share actionable marketing tips that you can take away and help with your own business to increase your sales revenue. And apart from that, I'm on LinkedIn all the time, sharing tips across websites, SEO, and digital marketing best practices.
Yeah, I've listened to a few of your pods. They're great. And yeah, you have some great guests on. Like you said, it's really actionable tips. I always think that's what people really want, right? They just want sort of stuff that can help their business.
Yeah, over time. I mean, when I first started the podcast, I think about a year and a half, I used to do kind of guest stories and things like that. And then I kind of thought, well, really want to kind of make best use of people's time. And rather than doing an hour episode, I'd rather just do 20 to 30 minutes or so. And just that way you can, whoever's tuning in, watching the video or listening, can just take away a few gold nuggets and put those into practice like the next day, really.
You still do the LinkedIn Live stuff, or?
Yeah. So most of the podcasts, when we've got guests on, we'll put through LinkedIn Live, and then we'll produce and edit up and then put it out on YouTube and the podcast like a couple of weeks after the recording, typically.
Nice.
So obviously this show we have it's primarily to do with the lead generation side of it. So if people listening who are involved in that, why should they be concerned with SEO and organic ranking and stuff like that? And how can lead generators sort of benefit from using that more, do you think?
Yeah, sure. So weirdly enough, whilst I'm a digital marketer now, I actually used to be in B2C Lead Gen quite a lot because I used to deal specifically in kind of B2C data sets. And I also used to sell B2C kind of real-time web leads. Mm-hmm. So I've got a bit of a background in the data game and dealing with kind of B2C insurance and home products and those kind of goodies. So got a bit of background in that. But yeah, in terms of getting back to your question, why should they consider SEO? Well, I know certainly my past experience, a lot of companies that want leads look into paid ads, whether that is Google AdWords, whether that is Facebook ads, whether that is display ads or different kind of network advertising to drive leads. So essentially, if you can get top of the organic results on Google, if you're doing Google ads anyway, it's giving you 2 bites at the cherry. Only with this bite, you're not having to pay every time someone clicks it, regardless of whether they turn into a customer or turn into a lead on your landing page or your website. And aside from that, SEO's got a bunch of advantages. It builds up brand reputation, builds up confidence if people keep seeing your brand, your company at the top spot of Google. And a lot of people now are aware of what's a paid ad and what's an organic listing. They're more educated. So they know that people have just paid for that top spot on Google. Whereas if they see a new organic, it bears a bit more weight as well as driving more traffic to your site. And on the basis that your website or landing page does a good job at converting, then it will drive more leads your way.
with your history in lead gen, you'll know it's very transactional, right? So everything's like immediate and everyone's in a rush and it's all 100 miles an hour. And so it's interesting, the sort of juxtaposition between SEO, which is like a longer lead time specifically. So do you think that's something that lead generators or even brands that are buying leads and stuff need to think about in advance when they're putting campaigns live, or can they sort of run it at the same time they're pushing something new live, or how would you look at it?
Yeah, in terms of time frame, it's definitely not an instant thing, that's for sure. So if you want results right here, right now, probably not going to be worth it. But like you said, if you are thinking, look, right now we're probably spending a bit more than we'd like to on paid ads, so if we can reduce that over the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, that would be beneficial. Then, or if we just need a steady flow of leads for the longer term, we're not getting perhaps the volume we need through our other channels, then perhaps you want to consider SEO. So then it's perhaps time to kind of look at, well, what's working well on our ads. If we're doing things like Google AdWords, what keywords are performing well, what are driving some great leads, then let's look at those kind of search terms from an organic perspective. Is our website giving the best content for these terms? Is it highly relevant? Is it helpful for people? And then shifting that into an SEO strategy. But yes, it's not going to be here right now, but certainly if you've got scope for it over the next coming months, year or so, then it's worth looking into.
And I think that feeds into something that we talk about quite a lot, which is for brands, it's less important, but I guess it is in another way, which is a lot of lead generators, they're just seeing it as like the generation of a lead rather than building a brand. And you feel like driving SEO as well, either via a site that you build or via the landing page, is going to start to actually have this brand reputation that they can build on going forward, rather than just this really sort of short mindset of like generating leads, like you say. Do you think it'd help with that?
Yeah, exactly. Because as with many pieces of marketing, customers are fickle, right? So even if they've clicked your ad, it doesn't mean, and even if they've liked your offer, it doesn't mean that they're gonna fill out your inquiry form, request a demo, or whatever the B2C kind of next step is, fill out some kind of form or come in as a lead just because they've done it right there. And then they might go onto your site, flick off, forget about it, see an ad another day, then do it on that time. Or in SEO's case, they might see you at the top of Google organically, and then think, great, have a look around your site or your landing page. Then a few days later, maybe see a social ad, maybe be reminded of you, and then go on that next journey. So it's very much the buying process, or the lead gen process, is very fickle. And as you guys probably know, it can't always be attributed to a certain channel. So having that brand positioning, being constantly there when people are searching for you, is going to add up, because people don't always know why they've done things, but you're in their mind. So when the time comes and they need your product, then they're probably going to remember you, and they might even search for you direct.
Yeah.
So, I mean, forgive me, this is a basic question, Sam, but I just want to get something clear for people listening.
Sure.
So when I think about SEO, I almost always instantly think of websites and kind of longer form content and doing it in that way. But like, how does that work with like landing pages? Can landing pages still be optimized for SEO in the same way, or is like a different strategy to that?
Yeah, so typically if we're going to help a customer with an SEO campaign, we'd always recommend a multi-page website, rather than just a single page. Landing pages are great, don't get me wrong, as a single page, but typically I'd recommend, if you're going to do that, then drive ads or drive email traffic or drive social traffic, whatever it may be. If you want a successful SEO campaign, you typically want a multi-page website. Reason being is Google loves content-rich sites. Google loves content pages that's really helpful, informative, and essentially gives people the answers they're looking for to their questions. And more often than not, just a single landing page is usually focused on an offer, right? So it's got to take someone from convincing them that it's going to help their problem, and then giving some social proof, and then call to action, taking them to action, fill out the form. Whereas with a multi-page website, you can focus on a bunch of different services. You can make sure you're giving people, let's say you're an insurance provider and you're maybe looking for like best life insurance product or something like that. if someone lands on your page, they want to make sure that you're really answering their question. You're saying, look, this is why it's the best life insurance offer. Perhaps you've got a video on there. Perhaps there's an infographic explaining your process. Perhaps there's a podcast interview. There's all these useful resources. So you're kind of building trust with the customer, giving them a good user experience, making sure they don't bounce off your page right away because you didn't answer what they were looking for. And likewise, you're telling Google that you're a reputable source, and that the information you're putting out is right. So yeah, typically multi-page sites tend to work way better.
So how easy is it though? So like the example you gave for life insurance, if you were let's say an agency or a lead generator that was building a landing page and you were bidding on Google, running some Facebook traffic, affiliates, whatever, and then you thought, okay, this is something we've been doing for the last 4 years, we'd better build a site around it as well. We want to rank highly if someone types in either life insurance, or it could be, I don't know, a bit more specific, like over 50s life insurance or something. I guess there's two questions. One is, what do you think the time frame is, and how easy or difficult is it to rank to the top of that?
It's not that easy.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So as you know,
because we'd all be doing it now, right?
As you know, the insurance sector is saturated, right?
Yeah.
So every man and his dog wants to be page one for some of those search terms. The niche you go, so yeah, like you said, if you can go like critical life cover or over 50s insurance, then that's going to help. But there's a few things to consider. So one of the very first parts of an SEO plan, SEO process, is to nail down the search terms, the keywords that you actually want your website to get found for. And when you're doing that, you don't necessarily want to you want to think about different stages of the sales funnel. So you want to think of, I normally split it into 3 processes. So kind of top of the funnel, where people aren't aware of what you do, maybe middle of the funnel, where people are perhaps comparing you to another provider, and then bottom of the funnel, where people are just ready to get a quote in lead gen case right away, or to do business with you. So if someone's searching something like best life insurance company or best life insurance provider, they're probably quite competitive terms that might take, I don't know, 12 months or so to rank, depending on how saturated they are. So they're quite bottom of funnel, people ready to buy. Whether you're searching something like, I don't know, Aviva versus, what's another life insurance provider? Is it
Alliance
in general?
Yeah.
So if you're comparing the two, maybe you're in the middle of the funnel because you know you want it, but you just want to compare a couple options. If you're really early in the funnel, top of funnel, you might be thinking, why do I need life insurance? Or why would I need critical illness cover? So your website, your SEO can capture people at different stages of the funnel, the sales funnel. Why do you want to do that? Well, the top of funnel stuff, it tends to be what's called a longer term keyword because it's got more search terms in the query. So why do I need X, or things to consider before getting X? That means on your website, when it comes to creating the content, you can create a dedicated page or blog article related to that really helps people. Why would you do that? Well, they're seeing your brand, you're building trust. When the time comes that they do need your help, you'll probably be remembered. They might sign up to your email, they might sign up to your video list or whatever. Middle of funnel, comparison. You're basically putting together content again on your site, whether that's a blog, a podcast, a resource, and you're weighing up yourself against another option. Or bottom of funnel, which tends to be the most competitive, where people are literally ready for the product and you want to come up top, which might, like I say, depending on how competitive the industry is in the insurance sector, could take 12 months, could take 18 months, depending what's out there.
Yeah, this is the thing, right? Because lead gen, I just did a post base yesterday or the day before. It drives so much awareness that's never taken into account, right? Because all the ads, all the views. So to get someone to fill a landing page form in under, I don't know, let's say it's vehicle test drive for Nissan, for example.
Yep.
You might have 1 million views of whatever that product page is, and that's all on paid media as well. So you're typically paying for every click, and everything that doesn't convert, if it's from a lead generation page, so it's, like besttestdrives.com or something, they've lost all that other traffic unless they're doing some sort of retargeting, which you don't pick very much up for anyway. But if you're going to put that much budget and that much effort behind it, to then not have like a fallback, like you said, when that awareness has been struck and someone then goes back a month later and thinks, oh, that test drive ad that I saw, I am thinking about switching. That's when you need the website and the SEO to kick in.
Yeah, completely agree. Exactly. I mean, there's a stat, a company called Lead Forensics put it out a while ago. It's probably changed a little bit since, but they used to say that 98% of your visitors will never convert. So that was how they sold their tools. So basically only 2%, which is around an industry average. It varies from site to site. So only around 2% of people that come to your site will ever convert into a lead or an inquiry. So how are you capturing their attention? How are you keeping them engaged? How are you being a useful resource? How are you educating them, helping them, informing them? So when the time comes that they do need your product, you're top of mind.
Yeah.
Because exactly like you said, like not everyone's going to inquire straight away. So if you can be a useful resource to them through the content on your own site or constantly appearing top of the organic search, then the chances are they'll come back to you when they're ready.
It sort of reminds me of, we were always talking about like the difference and the similarities between B2B, but it's almost like all that paid media is the awareness that's being driven by either a brand or a vertical. And then it's when you need the non-paid organic to actually be the intent channel. It's like the reverse almost. If only 2% are converting on the actual intent channel you're going for. But I think the same about brands as well. So let's say, I don't know, you are Bulb Energy, who've grown and grown and grown recently. And so you rank really highly under your own brand and everything else. But if someone then searches something like, I don't know, best energy comparison, they'll virtually never be there and they won't be bidding on it either. A bunch of lead generators will be bidding on it to try and capture leads to sell back to Bulb. And then top ranking will be just some comparison site or something like that. I always think brands just aren't taking advantage of SEO either.
Yeah. A tricky point there, Simon, is on those kind of terms as well, is that those kind of sites do very well. So when you search like, it's the same in our sector, right? So if you search like best energy comparison or compare web developers in my space or compare SEO developers, quite often the page one is just of organic search is just full of these directory sites, right? That are geared up to lead gen. And why do they perform well? Well, they're so content rich. They've just got so many information that's usually submitted by the actual companies themselves. So quite often the owners of the directories don't have to do a great deal of work because all their content comes from the vendors that are signed up to the site, which is interesting. So literally in our case, there's one called, in the web space, there's one called Clutch. There's another one called Good Firms. And basically agencies pay to be on these sites, but they're aggregating content from the agencies. So they're getting rankings on Google purely by the content that the companies that want to be listed on there submit. They even get the companies to submit blog articles and stuff like that. So it's worked really well. But yes, it's generally comparison sites tend to be page one when you're searching comparisons. But it's interesting. So is that company you've just mentioned, are they kind of spending quite a lot on paid ads, but they're not coming up on any organic searches? Is that right? Or
who's that Bulb?
Yeah.
No, I think they probably run some paid ads, and they'll probably do some like competitor or like their own brand bidding. But what happens, it's sort of similar to what you mentioned with the comparison sites. And this is what I'd like suggest that lead generators start thinking themselves like is lead generators will bid on key terms which they then capture leads on and sell them back to the brands that either could run it as an SEO or bid on those terms themselves. And it's because the brands aren't really focusing on lead gen, they're focusing on sales and building the brand, and then they're outsourcing their marketing from a lead gen level to lead generators, and it's coming back to them.
Yeah. I'm like I say, when I used to be in the industry, that was quite the case. It was always a hard game to try and offer and try and sell SEO to a lot of B2C companies, especially in the insurance space that we dealt in quite a lot, because they were just so used to right here, right now, and just paying for leads. They probably had a setup with a few different lead generation companies, like you said, or aggregators where they could just know what was coming in and know what was coming out. And that was that. But like you say, why not set up a site yourself, which, yes, it's not going to be quick, but a year or so's work, then the leads might start steadily coming in if you are in a competitive space. And most of these companies, not all, if you're a startup, then appreciate funds are going to be tight and resources in-house might be tight. So you might have to start on a smaller scale. But a lot of companies, like the ones we've referenced so far, have got big marketing teams, right? So why not get them to steadily work on a website and start putting together content, kind of understanding, look, these are the products we want to be selling. These are the search terms we need to go after. Let's agree on X amount of search terms. Let's make sure our website is going to be lightning quick. It's going to be a really useful resource if anyone lands on it. It's going to have great blog articles, great videos, great interviews, all the information pages. We're going to assess our competitors and we're going to one-up them on every information page we have. We're going to be more useful, more educational. We're going to really guide them to take action as well. So we're going to really at the end of each page, we can have a clear call to action for them to get a quote or request more details or book a call. So that way, kind of we're setting ourselves up for the next 6, 12, 18 months. We're going to get a steady flow of leads from organic, as well as what we're already kind of buying from lead generators anyway. So to me, it's common sense, but I sell it. So, I mean, feel free to ask, deep dive into any of the strategies if you want to.
But no, I think one of the things I was going to say, the reason it doesn't happen, I think, is more like an internal thing for the brands. If you talking about them specifically, which is the marketing team of a brand have their own budget and their own sort of incentive, and so they'll be building the site, building brand awareness, and everything else. And the stuff we're talking about would be to generate leads. It's actually a budget given to the sales team. And what they're thinking about is just generate leads quickly. And that's why effectively their marketing gets outsourced and they just want leads coming in.
Yep.
Whereas if they work together a bit more, this is the sort of strategy they might start thinking about.
Yeah. And it is difficult because I appreciate that you need X amount of leads coming in to generate X revenue per month. But yeah, it is a case of kind of coming out your comfort zone and just saying, look, how can we set our business up for next year rather than just what's coming in this year?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, again, looking at the brand side of things, looking at making your website more of a useful resource, and looking at also thinking about, well, we don't know what we don't know. So yes, we're getting customers from these channels right now, and we're buying these leads in. But what about this huge chunk of business that we know these lead generation sites are doing for us? What if we can just get a small slice of the pie? And that's what you need to consider, really.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting when you think about this sort of short-term transactional lead gen on one side, and then you're talking about a longer-term process and brand building and stuff like that. But then, does the challenge for you, like how do you sort of track that, for example? So if someone comes in and they see something at the top of the funnel, and then you make a brand sort of, you know, in the mind, like you say, and then like a year later they convert, is it difficult for you to sort of say to clients, like, you know, how you track that journey and how you prove that return on that, if you see what I mean?
Very much so. So it's just like anything top of funnel, unless they sign up to some kind of lead magnet, whether that's your email list or something else, then there might be a way of turning that back. Certainly with bottom of the funnel, that's all trackable. So if you've got a website and you've got Google Analytics set up and you're measuring each conversion point, so if someone's clicking to phone you or filling out a lead form or doing a chat bot or whatever step they take to speak to your sales team or generate a lead, then yeah, of course you can track all that and you can attribute that to organic search. But yeah, when it's more top of funnel, when it's more building brand, yes, it is trickier to track. I mean, I suppose one way you can do it is whenever they come in on board and speak to a sales rep, you measure, you ask them, look, how did you find us originally, or how did you stumble upon us? And you note that down in the CRM. But like I said earlier, not everything's trackable. You need to think kind of longer term. This is going to build our brand. Not everything we're going to be able to attribute. A big chunk of the lower funnel stuff we will. And that's the same for paid ads, right? Because not everyone that clicks the paid ad is going to convert right away, and it might be a mix. So if you are doing SEO and ads, then it's only going to complement the strategy by kind of building that multi-channel approach and making sure you're on the different platforms in front of your customer wherever they choose to kind of search for you.
So do you know what the strategies to use for top, middle, and bottom of the funnel pre-building a site, or is it a case of then optimizing it once it's being built?
Yeah. This could be an episode in itself. So building, I mean, I can quickly. What I'll do is I'll go through an SEO strategy in a fairly quick format and just stop me at any stage. So initially,
you just rumble on and we'll we'll take notes.
Like we said earlier, first you want to nail down the keywords that you want to actually get your website ranked for organically on Google. You don't want to do anything. You want to literally think about what are the products, what are the services we offer that we want to be found for. And if you've already got data from Google Ads or similar, then that's going to be really useful because you know what's working. So if we swing it back to, let's say you offer some kind of insurance product, it doesn't matter, swap out the insurance word for whatever else I say. So different search terms, you could think like real bottom of funnel stuff might be best life insurance provider, or buy life insurance now, or get a life insurance quote. People are typing that, right? They're probably going to head onto your page and click get a quote. Middle of funnel might be compare X to Y, or compare Y to Z, or comparing different products, or they might have literally typed in compare life insurance or something like that. That might be somewhere in the middle. Right at the top might be, why do I need X? Why do I need insurance? Or what to consider before doing this? Or how should I go about doing this? So making sure you've got search terms for each one. And tools that you can use are things like SEMrush, Ahrefs, Google Keyword Planner. All of these tools will give you data on how many searches these terms get per month, the search value, what your competitors are doing in the space, so you can kind of assess ones and then make a list of the ones you want to crack on and go ahead for. Once you've nailed down the search terms you want to look at, there's two main elements to SEO. Everything on your website, on-site SEO, and everything off of your website called off-site SEO. So the key, first of all, before you rush off and start doing what's called building backlinks and chucking out a load of content on other websites, is you need a solid foundation on your website, right? So you need to look at your website from a technical perspective and from a content perspective. So technically, you need to consider things like Google recently rolled out an update called Core Web Vitals. Some elements to that include making sure your website loads super fast. And there's a great tool that you can use called Google Page Speed Insights. And you can just put in your website URL and they'll tell you your page speed on mobile and desktop. Ideally, and they'll give you a score out of 100. And if it's kind of under 90 or so, they'll give you actionable tips. So it might say like your images take too long to load, or something's wrong with your technical like JavaScript, or there's an issue with your code, and you can kind of bring that to your web developer. So you want your mobile and desktop page speed under close to 1 second or less than 1 second as possible. You also want what's called a mobile first design on your site. Is now typically about 60% of all searches are made from mobile. Some websites a bit less, some websites a bit more. Having just what's called a responsive design on your website is no longer good enough. So that's basically where your website adapts to mobile, it adapts to PC, it adapts to tablet. That's okay, but if you can go mobile first, most people, especially in the B2C sector, I imagine, are flicking through their phone at night time. Perhaps they've seen your ad on Facebook, whatever. If your site doesn't work well on the mobile, they're going to head to a competitor that works better. So doing that, making sure your site's fast to load. And then there's a bunch of more technical things, which I won't bore you with too much, but making sure things such as the meta titles, meta descriptions on each page are relevant, again, to the search terms you've picked out at the start. So your homepage might be best life insurance provider if you're a life insurance company, and your description might be a little snapshot of kind of what you provide, and that's the listing that's shown on Google when someone sees your ad, the meta title and description, and then doing things like alt tags, which are over images, so when people hover over images they know what it means. So looking at all those technical elements and how your website is structured, and then looking at the content. So you don't want to jam every keyword that you have to your homepage, because it might not be relevant, especially if we're looking at more of these top of funnel searches. So what to consider before getting life insurance. You might want to do a dedicated page on this, which again, like we talked about earlier, is a useful resource. So it kind of gives everyone they need to weigh up the pros and cons of it, gives them some useful content, gives them some maybe useful video, a useful infographic. Quick tip on content is, if you get common questions from your customers each and every week, like how do we do this, or what's the best way to do X, or what should I consider before doing X? And if you're not sure what these questions are, you can ask your sales reps. You can literally say to your sales team, what is the most common problem or objection that our customers come to us each and every week without fail? They'll probably give you a list of 5 to 10 objections that you get from customers why they don't buy. Create content on that, put that as a website, blog post, article, or information page. Why? Well, you know there's demand for it. People are probably searching for it because it's a common problem you get each and every week. So yeah, structure your content accordingly, make it relevant to the search terms, make it as helpful as possible, do all those checks in terms of speed. So then you're basically making sure that your website has a solid foundation. Once you've ticked off all those boxes, then you can start cracking on with something called offsite SEO. So this is things like creating articles, press releases, informative blogs, infographics, animated videos, and building backlinks. Why do you want to do that? Well, on-site will only get you so far. If you're in a really niche industry, you might be okay. But most of the things we're talking about, insurance space, energy sectors especially, are very saturated. So we need to create backlinks, create content, and distribute it so we can help build up what's called our website's domain authority, help send links back to our site, build up what's called link juice within Google, and over time push our keywords that we're going for organically up in Google's rankings. So yeah, a bunch of ways you can do that: creating articles that are relevant, that include the keywords we're going after, then distributing them on relevant blogging sites, putting them on relevant press release sites, building links in directories, classified ads, and all this good stuff that's relevant to what you do in your industry, which your SEO team can do. Or if you've got a marketing team in-house, they can set up this strategy and this plan. And then you need to measure it all. So everything needs to be linked back to data. So you need to make sure you've got tools like Google Analytics set up on your website, and you're tracking all your traffic sources, so you can attribute what's coming as organic traffic, what's coming as paid. So you're tracking all your conversion points every time someone clicks your phone number, every time someone fills out a form, every time someone does a chatbot. So then at the end of the month, you can report all the activities you've done. So all the on-site activities you've done, all the content you've created, all the links you've built and distributed, and then report on the results. So measure the ranking improvements. So again, you can use kind of SEMrush or Ahrefs to give you this data, and you can say, look, one of the search terms, let's say best energy provider, we were unranked. Now month 1 in, we've gone from unranked to page 50. Month 2, we've gone to 45. And then most importantly, the conversions. So measuring, look, we've had this many form fills, this many click to calls, this many chatbots from organic results this month. So it's all kind of linked back to leads and revenue. That is the process in a snapshot.
Yeah, I don't know if I could listen to the long version. That was brilliant, though, Sam. I think that was a really good sort of overall view into sort of what it takes as well, and also why a lot of companies outsource it to people like you. It's because you need that technical knowledge, effectively.
There's a lot to it, exactly. So that's why we've kind of got a specialist team. Like you said, I couldn't do it all myself, because you need people to create the content. You need developers that know the on-site work, and then you need people that know how to build links. So it's a varied skill set. So yeah, making sure you've got that.
Do you write all the content for your clients as well, and when they're doing stuff like blogs and articles and things like that?
Yeah, good question. Because in a lot of sectors, you need industry-specific knowledge. So the answer is sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. For the larger companies, they'll have a marketing team and they might help us out. Medium-sized companies, we might create some blog articles and infographics and design things some month, and then they might help us with half of it. Whereas for the smaller businesses, we might do the job, we might do all of it, because they're too busy kind of running the business and running sales. So they want us to look after the whole process. So it varies depending on the size of the co usually.
Yeah, brilliant.
Wow, well, yeah, thanks for that. That was very very beneficial. I think if people listen to that, I think people already appreciate that.
Yeah.
And like I say, I think I mentioned before we start, I have like a rough idea of things to talk about roughly, and I will go end it saying, can you give us some actionable tips to help? But you've just done that in spades, so I think I'll move past that one because that was really, really useful. And I say actionable stuff, which is really good. But just to sort of wrap things up, I was just going to say, you mentioned the podcast. But if people are listening to this and think, yeah, I want to learn more about this, or listen to the pod, or work with you in some way, what are the best ways for people to find you?
Yeah, appreciate that. So by all means, check me out on LinkedIn. It's Sam Dunning. I share actual kind of SEO and web tips each and every day. Check out the podcast. It's Business Growth Show. Again, you can steal a bunch of tips yourself. It's on YouTube and all the podcast channels. But otherwise, if you've listened to me ramble on for the last 30 or so minutes and you thought, yeah, I'm feeling a bit frustrated because my website isn't converting all these visitors that I'm paying so much in ads or marketing, and they're not converting to leads. Or perhaps you keep searching on Google for the products you offer or the services you offer, and you keep seeing your competition ahead of you and you want a slice of that pie, then I'd love to chat to you. It's webchoiceuk.com.
Cool. I think one of the things that is really interesting is this similarity we've got, because we talk a lot about how brands should become lead generators and lead generators should become brands. And I think your sort of offering fits really sort of well into that. So, removing this paid media stance alone from the lead generators and start thinking about, and I think the reason why it's so important to actually start building a brand is the sort of data world that we're now moving into and have moved into already, where people want more control. They want to know who's got their data, what the benefits are. This sort of one-hit wonder of just generating a lead and then selling it with little sort of concept of the longer term view of your relationship with leads or the prospects or anything else. And so for me, I think it's a perfect way to do that and start thinking about it is, and it provides real commitment if you are a lead generator as well, thinking about actually building a site and the verticals that you operate in that's going to make you rank highly. Because it sort of also like puts some responsibility on you as well, right? So you can't just bang an ad up and start thinking how much going to drive leads. It's like, okay, you're actually going to list your benefits and highlight the reasons why people should work with you or people become leads for you, so that what is the service that you're actually providing rather than just generating a lead.
Yeah, exactly. And although I've rambled on about SEO for the last God knows how long, I'm very much of the mindset of having a multi-channel marketing approach. So just like you said, the problem with marketing or advertising is that any one time advertising can take a hit. So an example I often give is, look, I get, as our business Web Choice, we tend to get most of our business from 3 main sources, and that is SEO, organic SEO for our own leads. And likewise, we do the same for our customers. And then after that, it's paid ads. So we do paid ads and sponsored ads on a few different channels. And then thirdly is LinkedIn. And that's just the content I put out each day. And we get quite a lot of inbound opportunities from that. So that's our 3 top channels. And there's a few after that, of course. But if one of those channels takes a hit, I know that I've got SEO, I've got paid ads. Let's say LinkedIn changed tomorrow and LinkedIn went pay to play. I know that I've got paid ads, SEO, I run the podcast, we put out a bunch of content, I run a YouTube channel. All those channels are still going to feed leads to me. Whereas if you put all of your eggs in one marketing basket, like paid ads or whatever it is, if that crashes down tomorrow, what are you going to do? If you've got SEO and you've got all this evergreen content that's on the internet, it's not going anywhere, you know that that's probably going to be okay for a while. And over time, that's going to feed you some leads. So it's having that mindset of not everything has to be under one channel.
It must be a tough gig ranking organically for SEO on Google, because every SEO company must be trying to outcompete the other.
Oh God, yeah. SEO and web development. So one of our terms at the moment is web development company that we're page 1 for, but there's literally 100,000 or so web agencies in the UK. So it's quite a game, a bit like life insurance, really, I suppose, in terms of competitiveness.
Cool. Well, thanks for that. That was absolutely brilliant, Sam. I'm sure the listeners have taken a lot from this. And we'll see whose podcast ranks most highly in Finland under marketing. We were number 5.
I need to check it. Yeah, I haven't checked the stats.
We were number 5 for a day, and then it's just dropped. There was that one day we were number 5.
You might have dropped even more after this episode.
Let's be transparent.
We're now down to 45.
I'll take it. Thanks so much, Sam.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Enjoyed it. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.